Hey everybody, Qroo here. In today's lesson, I'm going to be talking about when to use the infinitive in Spanish. The infinitive is the unconjugated form of the verb. For example, comer, to eat. Well, I'm going to be talking about when you can just plug these infinitives into your Spanish without having to conjugate them. That's right, no need for conjugation. I like that. You like that, right? That's how we can speak more quickly in Spanish. If we can use these constructions that we're popping together and we could just take a verb and pop it in without any other thought, this is going to help us keep up in a real conversation. I mean, that's our goal, right? Now, some of these are going to surprise you, and the reason is because we're not using the infinitive in English. With many of these, we're actually using the English gerund or the present participle. I know all these grammatical terms just start to sound like noise after a while, and you're like, Paul, where are we going with this? Those are just fancy words for those verbs in English that end in ing, like working, learning, thinking. When they function as nouns, we call them gerunds. Swimming is fun. See, swimming is functioning as a noun. Now, when we use these same words with ing and they function as verbs or adjectives, we call them present participles. John is eating. That's a present participle. So why do we complicate it like that? I have no idea. It doesn't make any sense. Anyway, let's get back to the Spanish, because I'm teaching Spanish here, not English, right? The whole point of that was we use the gerund in English in sentences like this. Seeing is believing, right? But in Spanish, we're going to be using the infinitive there. Ver es creer. That was the whole point of that big intro there, okay? We're going to be popping in the infinitive. Now, there is a Spanish gerund. It's called gerundio, which you can see gerund right in the word, right? And that's when we have AR verbs and we typically put ando on them, like hablar would be hablando, speaking. In IR and ER, we would put yendo, escribir. To write would be escribiendo, writing. The really ironic thing here is that they will never be nouns in Spanish. They just don't stand like that. We don't say, viendo es creyendo, you know, seeing is believing. We don't say that. We're popping in infinitives. Swimming is fun. We're going to drop in an infinitive. Try that one. Nadar es divertido. Nadar es divertido. You've got that, right? Now, divertido, fun, is an adjective. It has to agree in number and gender with whatever you're talking about. When we're using our infinitives like this, they're just going to be singular masculine. Just think of them that way. Now, if there is a noun that means the same thing, you can use that, or you can use the infinitive. For example, there is a noun in Spanish for swimming, as in the exercise, the sport of it. La natación, la natación. So if I decided to use that, I have to make sure that my adjective agreed. La natación es divertida. Swimming is fun, or like the sport of swimming is fun. But why? You can just drop in infinitives. Isn't that easier? I think it's so much easier. How about skiing is fun, and the verb for to ski is esquiar? What would you say? Esquiar es divertido. How about this one? Learning Spanish is fun. You do that one. Aprender español es divertido. Right? It is fun. It's so much fun. All right, so you've got that one. Let's move on to the next way that infinitives are used, and you probably don't expect it, and that is after prepositions. And that's because in English, we commonly use the present participle here. And you're probably already like, present participle, Paul? Yeah, that's the ing verbs when you're actually using them like verbs or adjectives. Why a different word? No idea. Before washing the car. Antes de lavar el carro or el coche. We're just dropping in an infinitive. In the English, it has that ing ending, but in the Spanish, it doesn't. That de is a preposition. When you have a verb immediately following a preposition, it is never going to be in that Spanish gerund. You're not going to say something like, antes de lavando el carro. That's something that, like, I don't know, first year Spanish students, they make that mistake because we're literally translating from English, so I understand. Just think infinitives, even easier, right? Antes de lavar el carro. And I really like that as a sentence starter. Antes de, before, right? Before arriving home. Antes de llegar a casa. Before going to the store. Antes de ir a la tienda. Before going to bed. Antes de acostarme. Let's talk about that one. Antes de acostarme. With that one, I'm using the pronominal form. Those are our verbs in Spanish that end in se. You're probably calling them all reflexives. All reflexives are pronominals, but not all pronominals are reflexives. That can get confusing, I know. Let's not go down that one. If you see a verb that ends in se in the infinitive, like acostarse, to lie down or to go to bed, and you want to pop it in behind a preposition, you just have to make sure that that reflexive pronoun agrees with whomever you're talking about. In this case, I'm talking about myself going to bed, so I'm going to change it to me. Antes de acostarme, before going to bed. If I wanted to say before getting up, like getting up in the morning, our verb for that is levantarse. Levantarse, that's the act of getting up. How would I say before getting up, meaning myself? Antes de levantarme. What if I wanted to say you? Do you know that one? Let's do a reminder. These are our reflexive pronouns, right? We have me, te, se, nos, and for you folks studying European Spanish, and you're using vosotros, you have os, and then we have se. And these are going to have to agree with whatever we're talking about. So if I'm talking about you, the informal tú, and I want to say, hey, before getting up, and then I want to give you some command, clean the kitchen or something. Antes de levantarte. Antes de levantarte. Now there are a lot of great prepositions and prepositional phrases that you can use to really accelerate your Spanish. You can use them as sentence starters, stick them in the middle of the sentence. Since we just talked about antes de before, you probably know what's next. After. Después de. After going to bed, and I'm talking about myself, después de acostarme. After going to the store. Después de ir a la tienda. How about this? After eating dinner. Do you know the verb for eating dinner? Cenar. Después de cenar. Now we can pop this anywhere in our sentence. How about this? I went to bed after eating dinner. Me acosté después de cenar. Didn't have to think about that last part, just popping it in there, right? Here's a few more for your word list or flashcards or whatever you're using to study. En lugar de, instead of. This literally says in place of. That's what lugar means. In place of, en lugar de. Instead of watching TV, read a book. En lugar de ver la televisión, lee un libro. Just see, we have ver, la televisión, just popped it in there. Another great preposition you're going to be using with infinitives is sin, without. They left without saying goodbye. Se fueron sin despedirse. Se fueron sin despedirse. And so we have despedirse means to say goodbye. And we're talking about they, right? So the say part didn't have to change. We could have even made this easier, right? They went off without saying goodbye. Literally, we just say, sin decir adios, sin decir adios. I don't have to conjugate that verb. Another preposition you're going to see this used with a lot is por, which means because of. And por can mean a lot of different things. If you're having trouble with por and para, I have videos dedicated to that on the main site here and over my private learning group, the Qroo Spanish Crew. I'll put a link to that learning group in the description section. Over there you're going to find organized courses to help bring you through the language and teach you things, in a predictable order. If you're more intermediate or advanced, I have lessons for you there. People ask me questions directly. We have live events. If you want to take your Spanish to the next level, pop over to the Qroo Spanish Crew. Sorry for that little commercial break there, folks. Let me get back on task here. We're talking about por, as in because of. Here's an example. He was punished for arriving late. Fue castigado por llegar tarde. Fue castigado por llegar tarde. We're just dropping in infinitives, and on the English side, what are we seeing there? We're seeing a verb with an ing ending. I think we'll just call them that. Now, another way that you're going to see infinitives used in Spanish is with commands and instructions, but very general things. You're going to see it on signs a lot. No fumar, no smoking, right? But it literally says no to smoke. But we're not thinking of it that way. We see no fumar, no smoking. No correr, no running. You've seen this on signs. This one's pretty easy, right? Our next category is using infinitives after conjugated verbs. I take advantage of this a lot in my course. It's a really fast way for especially beginning Spanish students to make sentences in real time and keep up with conversations. This is how it works, all right? The first verb in a series is like the locomotive. That's the one we're going to be conjugating. That's the one doing all the work. After that, if there are any other verbs, they're just going to be the infinitive. We're just popping them on like train cars. Think of it that way. I don't know, that analogy works for me. Think of it that way. As I said, I take advantage of this a lot in my course. For example, we say a lot, I want to do something, right? So you should already know how to conjugate that. Quiero, quiero. And whatever I want to do, if it's a verb, I'm just attaching it. I don't even have to think about it, right? Quiero is my locomotive. Now let's just attach our train cars. I want to go to the beach. Quiero ir a la playa. I want to paint the house. Quiero pintar la casa. I want to go to bed. Quiero acostarme. And why is it acostarme? Because it's quiero. Everything has to agree, right? But I'm not thinking about it. I'm not even thinking about quiero because I use it so often that I'm not thinking, okay, my verb is querer, to want, and I have to think how to conjugate it. Quiero, and then popping in infinitives. But what if there are multiple train cars? What if I have a whole bunch of verbs? What do I do then? Doesn't matter. I can attach as many as I want, right? Even with some other information in there. Quiero pintar la casa, ir a la playa, salir a cenar y acostarme a las 10 de la noche. I want to paint the house, go to the beach, go out to dinner, and go to bed at 10 o'clock at night. Boom, I put them all together. You're also going to see it with things like I like what I like to do, like me gusta, right? Gusta is conjugated. I can just plug in verbs. Me gusta pintar, I like to paint. I can do as many as I want. Me gusta pintar, dibujar, ir a la playa, salir a cenar. I could just keep attaching them. Now, one thing that does confuse many students is the appearance of other prepositions after certain verbs. They're like, okay, I have a verb, and I'm thinking, I'm just going to take my infinitive and attach it to this conjugated verb, and wait a minute, why is there an a there, or a de? Here's an example. I want to learn how to play the piano. Quiero aprender a tocar el piano. Now, quiero is conjugated. Aprender is not. Tocar is not. But between aprender and tocar is an a. This throws people off. They're like, why is there a preposition there? Why is it not attached? Well, the answer is simple. Certain verbs are going to require certain prepositions before other infinitives can be added. One of those verbs is aprender. So you're going to have aprender, a, plus infinitive. When you learn a verb, you should look at different examples of that verb being used. And if you're dealing with a verb like aprender, you know it's going to take a, then right on your word list you have aprender, a plus infinitive is to learn how to do something. You're going to see this a lot with different things. A good example is like pensar, which means to think. It'll take different prepositions for different meanings. For example, if I'm thinking about something, you know, it's coming to mind, I would use en. Pensar en is to think about something. En este momento estoy pensando en mis vacaciones. At this moment, I'm thinking about my vacation. Now, if you use the preposition de, then it means like to think about something, but more to render an opinion. ¿Qué piensas de lo que sucedió ayer? What do you think about what happened yesterday? You're asking for an opinion. And with certain verbs that do take prepositions, sometimes they won't, and the meaning will be different. So, pensar plus infinitive, no preposition, means to plan to do something. Pienso ir a la playa. I plan to go to the beach. See how important prepositions are? Now, at this point of the video, if you're like, Paul, I have no idea I'm going to learn all these verbs and prepositions. Don't worry. They're here. I have videos on this stuff. Just go watch them. You're going to have a great time with this. You're going to be binge watching stuff on my channel all day, all right? Well, that's all I have for the video. If you enjoyed it, just do me a favor and give it a thumbs up. And until next time, hasta luego.